Welcome. We are currently standing and performing on the unceded lands of the Onondowaga Nation, keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. With respect, we honor the legacy and history of this land, its people past, present, and emergent. We welcome you. I'm Rose. I'm one of the creators. We'll introduce ourselves later. We welcome you to experience this performance as you choose. We will traverse from here down the paved path to the first bridge and back up again. There are some chairs down there. You will be able to follow our docents. Anytime you don't know where to go, look for our performers with these beautiful staffs. The docent will suggest a viewing perspective, but feel free to move, change perspective, take notes, dance with us. Our goal here is to activate the space of Ellison Park. As we process and walk together, we ask you to remain present. I know it's tempting to pull out cell phones and check our emails, but part of our goal is to have us experience this together in a way that's intentional. Greg?
Hi, I'm Greg Woodsbie. I'm leading our musicians tonight. The music is intended tonight to be a frame. It's a frame for the dances that it's accompanying, certainly, but even more so, it's a frame for the park, and it's a frame for our attention. You are co-creating this experience with the quality of your attention, which doesn't mean that you have to work harder. You don't have to be like, I'm here for this. No, in fact, you could probably relax in many ways and allow whatever is experiencing at the moment. So the music is intended to sort of coax your attention moment by moment, so that you will enjoy the park and enjoy the movement and rest in open delight. So we are so glad that you are here. Thank you.
Our first speaker is actually over here, so here we go.
Is it on? Yes. Okay, we got it. All right. Long, long ago, at the beginning of our time, there were two worlds. The water world, which covered the entire earth, and the sky world, up above. And this sky world was very similar to ours, with one big exception. This sky world had a celestial tree that radiated light and had many kinds of fruits growing from it. And in the sky world, in one of the longhouses, there was a pregnant woman living with her husband. And, as some of you know, pregnant women have a lot of cravings, and her husband was very, very good at getting anything she craved for her. But one day, she was craving the roots from the celestial tree. But he refused to get these roots for her because he would not harm this tree. And so, late at night, when she knew that everyone would be asleep, she went to the celestial tree and she began to dig. And she dug, and finally she hit roots, but they were thick and hard and she couldn't pull them out. And she kept digging, and finally she got these little roots that she could pull on. And as she was pulling on these roots and pulling, she pulled herself right into the hole and broke through the bottom of Sky World. And the animals in the water world, they saw the light from the celestial tree shining down through the hole that Sky Woman had broken through, and they saw her falling and pirouetting like a maple seed down towards the water. And so immediately, the swans and the geese, they flew up and they caught Sky Woman on their backs. And a big mother turtle came up and she offered her back to Sky Woman, and so the birds gently placed Sky Woman on the turtle's back. And Then they saw that in her hand she was still clutching the roots from the celestial tree. And they knew that for her to have food, they would have to get her soil so she could grow these roots. But the only way they could get this soil was to dive down to the bottom of the ocean and get it there. And the loon was the first to volunteer. The loon said, "I can do it." And the loon dove down and they waited. And the loon came up and didn't have any soil. Then the beaver volunteered. The beaver dove down and he didn't come up with any soil either. And after that, many other animals volunteered, and none of them could get the soil from down in the ocean floor. And so then, the little muskrat volunteered. And some of the animals actually laughed at him because he was so tiny, and there was no way he could dive down that deep to get the soil. But, nonetheless, he dove down, and they waited, and they waited, and then they saw little bubbles of air rising to the surface. And then Muskrat's limp little body floated up. But in his paw was a handful of soil. And so they placed the soil on the turtle's back, and Sky Woman was so thankful for the birds for catching her fall, and for the turtle for supporting her, and for the muskrat who sacrificed his life for her, that she began to sing a song of gratefulness and dance around the turtle's back. And as she danced, the turtle shell grew and grew and grew. And the turtle shell grew so big that it became Turtle Island, which you may know as North America. And so the Sky Woman and the other animals, they tended her garden of the roots for the well-being of us all. Meow it. Yawit Sino, Wanishio Umenu, Udontna, Wikidonta, Udontwa, Wado, Ugantmigantya, Anadi Nawanya, Sangwajanakta Osne, Gambaga Hambaga, Wanishio Umenu. Greetings, I'm thankful you're well. This is a good day. We come together and all creation welcomes you. Your creator is standing by you. This is a good day. Storytelling and gratitude are both things that are very important to us. And now, you'll meet my great-great-great-grandmother, Nancy Blacksboro, and she will tell you a little bit about her life. So get comfortable and enjoy.
Because we are all with you and we know more. Smell that roast corn. Wonderful, isn't it? That's one thing I don't like about being dead. You don't get to eat. One of our favorite meals is roast corn soup. Agay. When you hear how it came to be, you'll find it ironic. It's a bit of a story, so get comfortable. This is a beautiful time of the year to visit the Finger Lakes. That's where our ancestors were from, the Onondowaga people of the hill. You know us as Seneca. The hill is Bear Hill, east shore of Canandaigua Lake. I believe that's that way. That is where my ma was born. Let me tell you why we left that gorgeous area. I'm sure you all know the colonists and the British brought the Revolutionary War to our doorstep. We were all dragged into the conflict. Some natives helped the British, some helped the colonists. Because we, the Onondowaga, fought alongside the British, George Washington ordered General Sullivan and Clinton to go on an expedition whose purpose was the total destruction and devastation of our settlements and capture as many prisoners of every age and sex as possible. It will be essential to ruin their crops now in the ground and prevent their planting more, destroy and lay waste to all settlement and stores of food. Ma said we knew the armies were coming. Consequently, most villages were abandoned when the troops arrived. But the army followed Washington's orders, burning over 40 of our villages to the ground, destroying everything in their path. She remembers clouds of smoke that made day look like night. Almost nothing survived, but it was discovered that some of the corn, though charred, was still usable. Ma said the soup made with that corn was awesome. Whenever we eat corn soup, we are grateful that it kept our ancestors alive. But we also remember all those we lost because of Onondawaga's village destroyer, George Washington. My family and others settled on the confluence of Buffalo Creek and Niagara Rivers. That winter was severe, with 5 feet of snow. On going away, the people didn't have enough food or warm clothes. At least 4,000 of our people perished that winter. They froze to death or starved. I'm glad my clan survived, or I wouldn't be here to visit with you today, and you wouldn't get to meet some of my family. Agay. I've been dead so long I forgot my manners. Yahweh Skeno, I'm thankful you are all well. My name is Nancy Black Squirrel. I was born around 1808. I lived to be over 108. Some say 118 once a few years. This is my daughter Caroline. We call her Carrie. And her daughter, my lovely granddaughter Grace. They're going to not till I'm done batting my gums. They're going to share their stories with you. I'm tired, but I have more to say. The U.S. Constitution was signed shortly before I was born. Did you know that at the time your founding fathers drafted the Constitution, there were no contemporary democracies in Europe or the whole world for that matter to draw inspiration from, except the Native American democracies? Until the colonists set foot on Turtle Island, none of them would have ever personally encountered a democracy. Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, among others, spent a tremendous amount of time meeting with chiefs and discussing the mechanics of one of the world's oldest functioning democracies. However, they did not, in fact, would not even think of meeting with our clan mothers. George Washington laughed at our chiefs for counseling with clan mothers. He called them petticoat chiefs and said, they make a spectacle of themselves conferring with women. Your laws and constitution have always reflected that one-sided philosophy, and I believe ills are brought on a society by being out of balance, by ignoring half or more of its own population. Those fathers should have been listening to our mothers. Can anyone tell me the first line of the Constitution? Awesome. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote general welfare. The U.S. Constitution did not refer to my family or any indigenous person. We were not U.S. citizens. Worse, we were not even thought of as people. Many considered us to be animals. Maybe that was why so many of us got skinned like animals, as though, of course, there was profit in it, and it was sanctioned by the federal and state governments. There were bounties paid for Indians dead or alive, for slavery, my entire life. Can you imagine? I was around 53 when the Minnesota State Treasurer was paying $200 bounty for every redskin. $200. That was the U.S. government's name for our scalps, redskins. So you can see why we might not be a fan of that name for a sports team. To put that $200 bounty in perspective, at the same time, school teachers were paid between $25 and $74 per year. They'd have to work 3 to 8 years to make what one dead Indian was worth. If your fathers had listened to our mothers, you would not have needed a women's rights movement. Seneca Falls is in the center of Haudenosaunee territory, and that is no coincidence. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, they all visited our reservations regularly and talk to our clan mothers. Matilda Gage spent so much time with us, the Mohawk people adopted her. In reference to the Haudenosaunee, she said, "Never was justice so perfect, never was civilization higher." Ma's village was scorched by Washington's armies. Then the British burnt Buffalo in the War of 1812. I was little. It was terrifying. And then when I was 15, the Erie Canal was completed. To mark the event, Governor Clinton, yes, son of General Clinton, sailed from Buffalo to New York City aboard the Seneca Chief. Buffalo being the terminus of the canal, well, that land became the most valuable in the state, so we were forced to leave in order to move to Tonawanda Reservation. I had a nice life there. I had 12 children, and I was a midwife and keeper of the medicine. Some say I birthed most everyone on the reservation in one way or another. I'll share some wisdom before I go. When you take the time daily to be grateful and notice how much you really have, you are happier, and then naturally you want less. And wanting less is better for our Mother Earth. It's been truly nice to meet you. Before my daughter speaks, I'll leave you with words of the Peacemaker. In our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. Nyawe.
Yahweh Scano, you folks must be pretty special for my mother to speak English. She always refused. Me too. Most people didn't know we could understand or speak English. We learned a lot that way. Seems to me whatever was said in English never meant much anyway. I lived my whole life on Tonawanda, but I almost didn't. The Ogden Land Company illegally purchased the reservation and tried to evict everyone. Ely Parker, one of our chiefs, secretary to Ulysses S. Grant during the Civil War, went to Washington many times, but he could not undo what had been done. The U.S. government admitted the deal was illegal, yet after a 15-year court battle, they allowed us to purchase our own reservation, much reduced in size with the white man's dollar. Imagine buying your own home back after it had been stolen 3 times. Can anyone tell me the name of the body of water that runs through this park? Irondequoit Creek. Well, it used to be the Irondequoit River. The water used to come up to here, where we are standing. It used to be one of the most important trade routes inland. LaSalle once sailed one of his huge 4-mast, 40-ton schooners up this river, beyond where we stand today. He was looking for a passage to the Pacific. He did not find it. Him and Columbus. Don't get me started on that one. The Erie Canal construction, specifically between Bushnell's Basin and Pittsford, blocked the natural water flow, turning this into just a creek.
Fathers may have conferred with our chiefs when writing the Constitution, but not your laws. In 1880, Congress set up the civilization regulations. These were offenses only Indians could commit. These regulations outlawed most things native: our religion, our dancing, ceremonies, midwives, so-called medicine men, that was in there, in quotes, so-called, and leaving the confines of the reservation without written permission. Indians could be shot if they did so. Of course, people didn't always ask to see the paperwork before they opened fire.
Native Americans still had 138 million acres, but after the Dawes Act went into effect, it was reduced to 48 million by 1934. An additional 270 million acres were lost to the Homestead Act between 1862 and 1976.
1889 ushered in the Oklahoma land rush. More Indian land given away by the U.S. government and the centennial of the U.S. Constitution. Remember that. Justice, tranquility, promote general welfare.
1 year later, the Battle of Wounded Knee took place, except it was no battle. It was a massacre. The single largest domestic massacre in U.S. history to date. Almost 300 Lakota people died. 2/3 of them are women and children and elders, by almost 500 cavalry with 4 Hotchkiss guns that fired 50 2-pound shells per minute.
I was 19 when the Wounded Knee Massacre took place. I always wanted to have a lot of kids, but as I read the newspapers, headlines, the pictures, the celebration at what the U.S. Army had done, I did not know if I should bring children into this world. In 1891, the Indian Educational Congressional Act authorized the Commissioner of Indian Affairs to make and enforce by proper means rules and regulations to ensure that Indian children attended schools designed and administered by non-Indians. Indian schools were required by law to teach only in English. As Indian languages are detrimental. I'm sure you have heard of these schools recently. I understand they are in the news for the mass graves that have been uncovered. Now, we have always known that the graves were there. In fact, I would be amazed if you could show me one Indian boarding school that does not have one mass grave on its campus. From all over Turtle Island, our babies and children were taken hostage by the U.S. government as prisoners of war. Yes, what else would you call it? And sent thousands of miles away to boarding school. So many of our babies, our children, never returned, not even their dead, broken bodies. I did not live to the great age my mother did, but I am proud and pleased that I followed in her path. I learned the knowledge of our medicine and how to be a midwife from my mother. Even though we're both were now against the law, and like my ma, I had 3 husbands and many children. To bring children into this world, to nurture and teach them, and then have to watch them be taken away to Indian boarding schools, another piece of my heart froze every time a child was taken from me, and I wanted to die. I knew which herbs could help me on that path and take my pain away, but I had too many here that needed me.
You think of a boarding school as children coming home for weekends, holidays, vacations, not Indian boarding schools, not even summer vacation. They took children as young as 2 and 3, and those children sometimes didn't go home for 10 to 15 years or more, if they came home at all. If there was anyone left to go home to, they often didn't recognize each other and rarely spoke the same language anymore.
Grace never forgot our language or our ways. As Carrie, oh, wait a minute. I'll let Grace tell her own story, but I will tell you this. She did survive Carlisle and came back to her roots. That block of ice in my heart, I guess, eventually melted, but it left a kind of permanent hole. I don't know how it's possible to recover from an experience like that. I am grateful for Mother Earth, and I am grateful that my children who went to boarding schools all came home, at least physically. Take good care of your children and their future, and their children's future. Yahweh.
I would have liked to have been a midwife and an herbalist, or at least had a choice. but I had no options. I was to attend Indian boarding school. How I loved playing with my siblings and cousins on Onondowaga. I missed everyone and everything when I was taken away. I have never felt sadder or more alone. Follow me, please. And I was sent to Lincoln Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I could not believe how big and noisy and smelly Philadelphia was. It smelled so bad that I had to breathe through my shirt while I was there. And on the way from the train station to the school, I saw 2 dead horses just lying in the street. I'd never seen anything like that before. I couldn't believe that that was to be my home. And I didn't even know for how long. I knew no one there. I'll tell you more about the Institute later, but right now we have some beautiful dancers for you. So please enjoy the park, enjoy the dancing and the music, and I'll see you later. Now,
lamenting to 1,000-year-old widow how she couldn't care for her child. It makes me think of summer. The child found peace under generous, loving, shielding shade. this lifetime. I remember swinging under the willow in my grandpa's front yard. And I remember when my dad planted the willow in my backyard. And when I walked past the willow on Highland and move over on purpose so that I can touch the branches with my hands.
It was July 1687.
I heard the darting footsteps of the brave scout, the lightning, languishing, pounding steps on the ground, still far away, and I knew. Tread gently on the path, my child, lest the ancient trail hurt. Imagine a cat as you burst forward. Feel the suspension of your body in the air. Even running in great earnest, mind your move, mind your stride. Live this moment with clarity. You too, newcomer, tread gently on the path, even as your army is bent on and will succeed in raising Onondowaga, the brave scouts' entire community, their entire corn and other crops. Mind your move. What is its meaning? If you knew, in time, down from Indian Landing, Onondowaga will rise again on the hilltop burned today.
Sentinels. What have they seen? Soft ground of a hard-paved path. Ladders of branches dot the towering spruces. As they reach for the sun, the external sides thrive. The sides they present to each other wither. Though making room for cohabitation, they hold their ground. Despite the precarious shift of land beneath them.
How do you lead to your motionless movement?
What do you perceive?
Death does not equal disconnection. Streams of energy, the wind sees what we cannot see.
Stillness wanders downstream, topped with waves of gentle breeze.
At the edge of the marsh, the ancient river persists through a valley of its own creation, preceding the glaciers coming and leaving. At one time, we would all hear submerge in its mighty waters, kingfishers, and occasionally canoes splashing overhead.
Streams of all shades in a shaded wood, trickling water and layers upon layers of rock. Quick red squirrel approaching, on alert and ready to dart, a tail squeaking a warning. Ants gathering a meal. Red-headed woodpecker peeks from behind a tree.
How do I describe this place? A peerless ecological equilibrium. Am I invasive or endangered relative to other aquatic plants? Are you invasive or endangered relative to all other animals, plants? And the accelerated climate change? Am I cattail, sausage tail, wickgrass, sweetrush, and reedmouse? Have I, as Zafu and Tatami, palmed you? Have I cradled your young as I sheltered dragonflies and garter snakes? Am I food to you as red-winged blackbirds and muskrats also nibble at me? Are you food to the mosquitoes swamping with me? What does it mean that we're relatives in DNA? Am I, in this wild, still place, sentient? How is our well-being intertwined?
What if we lean to your motionless movement?
What do you perceive?
way, please. Are you enjoying this performance? I'm so glad. I'm so glad. A lot of wonderful people involved in it. And the dancing and climbing trees. And there's even more in store for you as we go down the hill. But that was one of the things I realized too that I missed at the Lincoln Institute and at Indian boarding school. Because as you hear, I didn't go to just one Indian boarding school. I went to more than one. But it was the climbing trees and dancing, and I'm seeing children just dancing to the music and playing in the park and exploring nooks and crannies, and it's heavenly. It's absolutely wonderful. So that was stolen from me as well, and that's so unfortunate for so many Native American children who had their childhoods genuinely stolen. Is this up a little further? Okay, there we go. All right. Like all Indian boarding schools, they stripped us of everything we wore, owned, including our own hair. They washed and scrubbed us in kerosene. We had to wear their uniform, follow their religion. We could not speak our language, nor do or say anything that was native. However, it was so confusing. We thought it was a trap at first. Mrs. McHenry would ask us all kinds of questions about our traditions, and she would take copious notes. Turns out, Mary McHenry was considered quite an Indian authority. She wrote many books on the topic, and she traveled all over the world giving lectures. She was paid handsomely for imparting this knowledge. We were paid nothing. We can walk this way, follow me down the hill. If walking down this hill isn't comfortable for you, you can go back the way you came, but we'll continue this way. To avoid summer epidemics, we were shipped out of the city to a farm or to work or placed in private homes to do housework, childcare, and cooking. I was paid $5 a week for working every single day except for Sunday. After 4 years of Lincoln and 3 summers working for strangers, I was so happy to be going home. I wasn't home long before I realized I was going to Carlisle. The Lincoln Institute was almost a walk in the park compared to Carlisle Industrial School. Carlisle was a prison, labor, and military camp combined. Everything was run by bells, bugles, and belts, or worse. If they weren't working us, they were marching us. And with all the industry, feedings, and marchings, it was never quiet. Not like this beautiful park. Even at night, there was the constant sound of crying, and sometimes it was your own, and you didn't even know it. I was born in 1892, the same year the Pledge of Allegiance was written to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus discovering America. We were forced to recite that every day at Carlisle. Not much liberty in that, is there? We learned all about Columbus and the Pilgrims and how kind they were to feed the Indians. I wish the folks at Carlisle were kind enough to feed the Indians. We were always hungry. And the same with my cousins who went to Thomas Indian School, and they had a beautiful farm out there. They were always raising all kinds of crops, but they got sold off to line the pockets of the people in charge. And at Thanksgiving time, we were forced to dress up like pilgrims and Indians. But that was not the worst of it. No, really, it was the solitary confinement, the starvation, and the beatings out back. I don't know how many times they made me scrub sidewalks on my hands and knees with my skirts rolled up, or sometimes they just made me kneel on cement, and sometimes with pencils under my knees. I guess it was for something I said, but I'm not even really sure. Or maybe that's why my knees bother me so much now. You're probably wondering, why would parents allow their children to go? Parents had no choice. It was U.S. policy, and it was enforced. Parents tried to hide their children, but were harshly punished. Government officials would starve the rest of the family, arrest parents, elders, and chiefs, and beatings were some other forms of coercion, as well as gunpoint. 19 Hopi men were imprisoned on Alcatraz Island for over a year for refusing to send their children to Indian boarding school. Their reason for refusal was that all the other children from the village who had gone to boarding school had died. Sometimes officials just grabbed kids out of yards and tied them up in a wagon. Those children and parents never even got to say goodbye. Worse may have been the children who dutifully brought by their parents, who then felt betrayed and deserted by their parents for the rest of their lives. They had us for us cooking, cleaning, or sewing while we were at Carlisle. We sewed all our own clothes, the clothes for the other children. We did repairs. We received no compensation for anything we did. It was all part of our education. Well, I knew how to cook and clean and sew before I ever stepped foot into that awful place. I can't think of anything they taught me except to march, in formation, and to hate. I had never felt hate before I went to boarding school. I was 18 when I was released. It was so wonderful to be home on Tonawanda. It was good to be with family, but there was no work there, so I got hired cleaning houses in Rochester. I was so happy to be done with boarding schools. I had a job. I was feeling kind of young and fancy. But there was a polio epidemic, and World War I broke out. Maybe that's why I got married. I'm not sure. I know I also felt lost, like I really didn't belong anywhere. I'd changed so much. My family was not happy that I married a white man, and his family did not like me because I was Indian. I could never go over there. When his father was home, it was verboten. His father insisted only German be spoken in his house, and my new husband insisted only English was to be spoken in his. Then the Spanish flu broke out. I didn't want to be around so many people, so we went back to Tonawanda to live for a while. In 1918, I had my first of 7 children, Ruthie. She was a smart one, a hard worker, and plenty stubborn too. I wished for her a happier life than I had, one with more choices and opportunities. We moved back to Rochester. We were always moving. And I was right here in this very park, Ellison Park, on July 8th, 1938. In fact, you might have seen a picture of me up at the fort when they dedicated Fort Schuyler. They wanted real Indians. And so there was a lot of family around. It was fun. Sometimes I miss being alive, but it's a lot less work being dead. If you ever want to visit me, there's a wax statue of me in the Rochester Museum and Science Center. I have been pounding corn for over 100 years up there. I had about half as much time on this earth as my grandmother that you met earlier. My heart gave out. Maybe it was the horrendous food at boarding school, or maybe it was being separated from my family for so long, or perhaps it was being separated from the land that contributed to it. Well, I'm grateful I did survive Carlisle. I could not imagine my bones spending an eternity there, and I'm proud that I didn't allow them to steal my language. My oldest daughter, Ruthie, was our only one to graduate from college. I told you she was a smart one. And someday she can tell you all about her experiences, that she had so many. Today, you'll learn more about her and other generations up at the fort. Actually, I didn't get that piece done for today, so if you come back Sunday, you'll see that part. And you already met my daughter, Eva, up at the top. She did the creation story, and soon you'll be meeting my son. And now I screwed up the generations, my apologies. Anyway, I am proud of all my family, and I am so happy that you came and that you were able to meet them. Nyaway.
Step out to nature, now and often. Reconnecting with human and more than human beings of regular and serendipitous encounters. What is
the one new thing of which you had no clue of their existence and relationships? To natural and other stories of the place, fall in love anew. Every rendezvous a new beginning, fresh and unpredictable. Tuning into the diverse and life-sustaining energies all around us, can you discern? And will you labor? For more collective and convivial possibilities?
This is the story of the Peacemaker and the Tree of Peace. Follow me. The story of the Peacemaker and the Tree of Peace originated in a time of terrible conflict. It was a time when people forgot to be thankful. A vicious cycle of war and revenge was running out of control among the 5 nations. It was amidst all this chaos that a messenger of peace came to our people, the Haudenosaunee. We consider his actual name to be sacred and therefore never use it. He was called the Peacemaker. He was born a Huron, and as he got older, it was quickly realized that he had great powers of persuasion and was of good mind. When he reached manhood, he left on a mission to restore love, peace, and harmony back to the people. To do this, he proposed a set of laws which the people and nations could follow to live in unity. It was called the Great Law of Peace. He built a canoe of white stone and set out on his journey from the northern shores of Lake Ontario. He wished to establish peace among the warring villages of the East. The first person to accept and embrace the words of the Great Peace was a woman by the name of Jagunsase. She was a neutral and she was kind to all who passed through. Because she became a proponent of peace, the Peacemaker told her that after the formation of the Confederacy, and for all time, there would be clan mothers in her honor. These clan mothers could choose our chiefs and could also dehorn the chiefs. In this way, Jagunsase would never be forgotten. The Peacemaker visited the Mohawks first. Because the Mohawk people were such a fierce and warring nation, the Peacemaker worked very long and hard to convince them to accept the Great Law of Peace. He was often tested and had to prove himself before he finally won them over. He then left for the other nations of the Haudenosaunee, the Onondowaga, the Oneida, the Cayuga, and the Onondaga. His travels eventually brought him to the Onondaga Nation, where he met Hiawatha, a former chief who had become his loyal companion and assistant. Also at Onondaga, he encountered the feared chief Tadadaho, who was an evil man with a crooked body and snakes in his hair. Tadadaho would not give in to the Peacemaker's many attempts to get him to accept the peace. The Peacemaker and Hiawatha called on Jagunsase and the other nations to help sway the mind of Tadadaho. They tried many times in many ways to convince him, and in many times they failed. Finally, Jagunsase sang to him. Since Tadadaho lost his parents when he was young, a woman's voice was something he needed, and he agreed to listen to them. Once Tadadaho's mind was pacified, his body straightened, and Jagunsase combed the snakes from his hair. After successfully winning over Tadadaho, the Peacemaker looked upon the men and saw that they were still carrying their weapons. He then said that they needed a symbol that would remind them of their promise of peace. Looking around, he saw a very tall pine tree. On the tree, the needles grew in clusters of 5. He used this as a symbol of the 5 nations being bound together as one. He then uprooted the tree and instructed the men to cast down their weapons of war into the cavity, to bury their greed, hatred, and jealousy. An eagle sits atop this white pine, guarding the Confederacy. The Peacemaker then took an arrow from each one of the 5 nations and bound them together. By each nation contributing an arrow, it symbolized the combining of individual powers into one great power. The union was now complete, a union that no one can bend nor break. Nyawit.
We also appreciate that the blue jays and the woodpeckers and the crayfish and the toads shared their space with us for the very first segment tonight. Don't forget, as the performance concludes, this is the conclusion of the performance tonight, the court will be open so you can view beautiful photography and videos that are up there. So please do that. We also have another show on Sunday, which we're going to come back to if we don't have time to do right now. We are so grateful for this park and for everything. I think that it's time to say our thanks to the people that put this wonderful show together, the creative minds. Rose?
Hi everyone. Hi, thank you for coming. I'm the choreographer, but they are the people that created the movement with me. So it's all about the dancers and Andrea. Andrea, I'm the visual artist, photographer, for one of them this year. And I just wanted to make a connection. The women in the images in the court are indeed the women whose stories you've heard this evening. Nancy, Mary, Grace, her mother Ruthie, and Trish. This is Trish. So we wanted to find a way to honor those ancestors by embedding them in this room. So I hope you're able to go back, and if not, then it's all right.
Stella, it's lovely and an honor to have you to be with us tonight. I'm Stella Wang. I did research, collected stories, arranged, and wrote the spoken text that goes with the dance program. Thank you.
Thank you again, Greg Woodsbie. Thank you to my musicians, and thank you all for being here.
That's it.